cultural appropriation discourse has become part of her brand, and from my perspective, good for her. It's honestly far more interesting than her music. Hi, and welcome back to me talking about whatever I want. Today I want to talk about Bhad Bhabie and blackfishing, because honestly, I have a lot to say. But first, of course, I'd like to do my comment shout out from my last video. This comment actually goes out to the last one standing, who says, D'Angelo, watch his videos so we don't have to. D'Angelo, aggressively scrubbing eyes with bleach after recording. This is fine. Funny that we should mention bleach and skin contact, because today we're going to be talking about black people, but also white people, and I think that says a lot about society. So the thing we're talking about today, Bhad Bhabie actually comes under fire for literally all of the time, but I feel like there's more to this than people actually discuss, and I want to discuss it because you can have a conversation about someone and criticize them and call what they're doing wrong without canceling them. So I'm not here to cancel anybody, sorry, but I am here for some discourse. So first things first, who even is Bhad Bhabie? You may know her as Danielle Bregoli. She's a rapper and a social media person. She's basically only famous for trying to act gangster. I mean, for a while there, she was more commonly known as the Cash Me Outside girl because of her 2017 appearance on Dr. Phil.
And all these hoes laughing like something funny.
Did you say the hoes are laughing?
Yep.
Her terrible mother brought her on Dr. Phil's show because she wanted to boost her bad behavior to a national television audience. Because of course, that's a very normal thing that you do when your kid's not acting right. Of course, Dr. Phil didn't accomplish anything and nothing was gained because he doesn't actually help anyone ever. But we did get a good meme out of it.
Catch me outside, how about that?
But honestly, Danielle was 13 at the time, so she was taught at the ripe old age of 13 years old that bad behavior equals negative attention, but negative attention is just as valuable as positive attention. So she literally embraced the bad behavior and became Bhad Bhabie. B-H-A-D-B-H-A-B-I-E. Don't ask. Bhad Bhabie's a rapper. She has a whole career now. Unfortunately, it was kind of successful. In fact, she was the youngest person to go platinum within the last decade. Basically, she or somebody very close to her used the Kardashian model, which is just get famous for something that doesn't really merit having a fan base, but then offer that fan base a physical product. But instead of makeup or shapewear, Danielle Bregoli is just offering people rap music. So bottom line, at 17 years old, she's more successful than me, you, and probably anybody else. But the one thing that hasn't changed since her Dr. Phil days are the controversy. And the latest one that she's gotten into surrounds blackfishing. So for those of you who don't know what blackfishing is, it's a portmanteau of the word black and catfish. Now, it's very important to note that blackfishing is not what Rachel Dolezal or Wovicki or Anthony Eckendile Lennon were doing, where they're basically non-black people telling everyone around them that they are black and trying to pass as black people. That's obviously just literal insanity, and most people aren't doing that. Blackfishing 100% boils down to visuals. It's when a non-black person tries to look black or biracial black. So I'll give you a really good example. That would be Jaya Fern. She went like somewhat viral, garnering a little bit of a buzz and a couple of articles here and there because she looked so much like Nicki Minaj. It was actually kind of creepy. But then someone discovered that she was just straight up a white girl. I chose these two pictures right here side by side because a lot of times people try to shoot down blackfishing allegations by saying it's just lighting. Well, as you can see, they're both in very bright lighting, and her whole skin tone has transformed into that of someone of another race. Another good example is Hannah Whitafred Tittenser, or Dirty Hippie as she goes by on Instagram. So I mean, to me, this doesn't even look like a black person, but she's still obviously changed her skin tone to match that of somebody who is not white. Like, there's tanning, which I do think it's pretty silly to accuse people over, and I have seen some people get accused of blackfishing over tanning. And then there's just excessive skin darkening to the point where it's a wonder you don't have cancer. So the latest Instagram person who got the blackfish label slapped on them was, of course, Bhad Bhabie. And I'm gonna be honest here, Chief, these videos are not it. I went ahead and muted the audio because she has rap music playing in the background, but as you can see, she looks wholly different. Like, I'm sorry, I, to this day, am having trouble believing that this is the same person as this person. Of course, that video got like thousands upon thousands of comments, and it was split. Some of the people were defending her, some of them were detracting, but I wanted to see what other people had to say about this, my followers specifically. So I posted those images on my Twitter with no opinion, just a couple skull emojis, and I also got a mixed response as well, though obviously the majority of the people in my comment section were like, yeah, no, she's definitely blackfishing, but there were still people saying that it was just like a spray tan. So the conclusion I've come to is that there's a range of opinions on the matter, and on one extreme, people are saying it's just a spray tan, which I think is ridiculous. But on the other extreme, which I also think is a little silly, people are saying she looks black now. Honestly, she doesn't look black. Now, whether or not she's trying to look black is a different matter entirely, but my opinion is kind of in the middle-ish. No, it's not just a tan because I have eyes and I can see that there's a lot more going on here than a darker skin tone. But in this case, no, I don't think it's only blackfishing either. And the reason why is because we have to have a conversation about cultural appropriation. But before we get into that, I just want to point out her response to this whole situation was just awful. I mean, keep in mind that she is 17, but still. She basically posted on her Instagram story, "Why are y'all so worried? I was just getting makeup done for a photo shoot. There's a pandemic going around, but you're worried about me. Couldn't be me." Basically, her argument was there are bigger issues, which is always a really sad response to criticism in my opinion, because by saying there's bigger issues, you're basically admitting that what you're doing is somewhat of an issue. And also, it's just really dumb to pretend like people can't be worried about a pandemic, but also talk about you transforming into some other race at the same time. Also, her argument was hypocritical because she's telling people to worry about the pandemic, but she had people over at her house giving her a tattoo. They could literally be asymptomatic carriers. Like, that's you're the one not worrying about the pandemic. Also, per her assertion that it's just a photo shoot, yes, obviously she let somebody do that makeup on her, but even the makeup person knows what they were doing and she knows what's going on too, because in her own video, her face is a completely different color than the rest of her body. Another reason her trying to downplay it is a little silly is because she's had just a slew of similar issues in the past. Her appearing to be a different shade in this one picture is just kind of the icing on the cake built off of what people are calling cultural appropriation. She has all kinds of black hairstyles all over her page. This was all swirling around so much that she reacted to the wide-ranging cultural appropriation allegations in an interview.
You cannot act the color. Do not tell me I'm acting black because I'm not. I'm acting whatever you want to call it, urban. I don't even have a name for it. I just call it me.
Yeah, I'll discuss her take in a second. But that interview was all the way back in 2017. So this has been happening for years. Cultural appropriation discourse has become part of her brand. And from my perspective, good for her. It's honestly far more interesting than her music. But unfortunately, via this, she's enabling a community of people who just shut down all discourse about cultural appropriation. Anytime anyone raises the slightest issue against everything she's doing, they just get shut down, shamed, mocked. And it's a bit weird when you kind of look at the people raising issues versus the people defending her. But basically, all her stands just come to the conclusion that people are mad for no reason, and I'm here to tell you that that's wrong. But to understand why it's an issue, we would actually have to talk about cultural appropriation, and I've got the time. You got the time. You clicked into this video. You saw how long it was. I think conversations about cultural appropriation often break down so quickly because people are quick to draw parallels between things that are not correlated. So I'm actually going to reverse engineer my conversation about cultural appropriation, and I'm going to start with a black girl who straightens her hair and changes her eye colors to that more associated with a European. Bet you never thought a cultural appropriation conversation would start like that, now did you? So for my example, I'm going to use B. She's an Instagram person on Instagram at melanin with a V. A lot of her features are taken from a European beauty standard. She has very long, light hair, as you can see, and she's had it for years. And her eyes range from like blue to gray, depending on whatever contacts she has in. And I think B is especially relevant to this conversation because she kind of made herself look that way in the same way that Danielle Bregoli darkened her skin and put those braids in her hair. B put those contacts in and changed her hair as well to match what many consider to be the opposite aesthetic. So if you're wondering, like, well, do I see a difference between what she's doing and what Bhad Bhabie's doing? Yes. Yes, there's a huge difference. Even though the difference is big, it's not actually that complicated. Basically, B is still black. Nobody is ever going to think that B is a white girl. Societally speaking, no matter how traditionally pretty she is, traditionally pretty in this case referring to the European standard I'm applying to her, she's still a black girl. And in this society, being black is still held against you. She can't just change her skin tone to make her appear a different race and then collect the benefits that come from that. In Bhad Bhabie's case, you have to realize that she can scrub off that fake tan and take out her braids, fix her edges, and turn off that horrible filter that makes her look like she's stuck in an 80s movie. And then bam, she's just Danielle Bregoli, your average white girl with all the benefits that come along with being a white girl in America. I mean, the people arguing that there's no difference between black girls straightening their hair and white girls wearing Fulani braids, hopefully I've just explained how there is a difference, but if you disagree with that, would you like to prove that there's no difference between living in America as a black person or a white person? Because if so, I want to move wherever y'all are. There's an uneven dynamic at play here. Bhad Bhabie's taking all the benefits of having darker skin, which in this case are literally just skin deep. It gives her an exotic look and ambiguous look, and I'm using these terms very lightly because I think they're just weird to apply to people, but she doesn't have to deal with any repercussions from being actually dark. My experience doesn't come with an off switch, and that's not something I would really expect someone in Bhad Bhabie's position to understand. All of that being said, I'm not saying that means she's not allowed to wear it. Just don't try to pretend like it's the same thing, you know what I mean? Is it racist for Kim K to wear Fulani braids and tan her skin? No. But is she profiting off of an uneven power dynamic based off of race? Yes, of course she is. But is it just deeper than, ooh, one kind of person does this, so I should be able to do this too? Yes, of course it is, because we don't live in a place where one kind of person is treated the same as another person. If I see a girl walking down the street with box braids, I'm not going to think to myself, oh, she hates black people and she doesn't value the black experience. But I would absolutely have a standard to hold her to where I would hope she understands the difference between her wearing box braids and a black person wearing box braids. So yeah, that's my cultural appropriation opinion in a nutshell. I'm not sure why I'm doing this arm movement. So now that we've discussed cultural appropriation, let's discuss acting gangster, or let's just call it what it is, acting black. That's what people accuse her of. That's what she's defended herself against. So remember in her little interview where she said she's not acting in color because you can't act a color? She's correct. She's not acting black. Let's be honest. She's acting like a black stereotype. Ignorant, petty, loud, does not equal black. I am pretty petty, I'm not gonna lie, but I wouldn't really chalk that up to my race so much as my personality. Ignorant, petty, loud, brash, all these things that she's trying to be is not black. It's what racist people see black people as. It's the box that people try to categorize black people in. I mean, out of her own mouth, she said she's not acting a color, she's acting urban. So what she's doing is acting at the end of the day, and urban is an interesting choice of words seeing as it's historically used to box black people in. So if you ask me, acting like a black stereotype rooted in racist ideas, which she is doing, is far worse than just acting black, which is impossible to do to begin with. Also, speaking of acting and wannabes, it's worth noting that you can appreciate a culture without trying to act like that culture's stereotypes. For example, I'm obsessed with this game Tokyo Mirage Sessions, which I made the mistake of downloading at the same time as I downloaded Animal Crossing, and now I've barely played Animal Crossing at all. Tokyo Mirage Sessions is a Japanese game about Japanese characters making Japanese music, and I love this game and everything about it, but I'm not going to start trying to talk like what I think a Japanese person talks like. One, because I just don't think that's right, but two, I would be just as cringy as Bhad Bhabie and her fake accent. Honestly, you're free to incorporate elements of other culture into your style if you want to, though you will have to take that up with members of said culture. But if fashion is part of your appreciation for someone else's experience, I don't think there's any circumstances in which it's okay that it starts creeping up in your physical features. And I'm not talking about hair, and I'm not talking about eye color. I'm talking about your skin color and your facial features. Just like a black person lightening their skin to look white would be horrifying and wrong, and I would call that out as well. Darkening your skin tone as a lighter person so that you can look darker is insane. And obviously I'm not talking about tanning. If you thought I was talking about you just now, I will ask, how many shades darker are you than your actual skin tone? There's a lot of tan people walking around, and most of them are not being accused of trying to look like a different race, because they're not. and they don't look like a different race. Also, one final note on culture, it's worth noting that the internet has changed the way culture works to begin with, which is why it's harder to have these conversations about cultural appropriation. And I just want to specify that I'm dealing with a very superficial definition of culture right now. I'm specifically talking about hair, music, clothes, even somewhat your mannerisms and speech patterns, because typically these are the things that people get accused of cultural appropriating. See, that kind of culture used to be based solely off of where you grew up and what kind of people your family were and what kind of friends you were hanging out with. And back then, where your culture was so tied to your location, if somebody was emulating a different culture, it was most likely mockery because you've had no experience with that. But now, thanks to the internet, culture is a very individual experience. A lot of the way you grow up and the things that you're exposed to now are a choice. You listen to whatever music you want from any part of the world. You choose the fashion that you want to wear based off of things you see on the internet, which can be posted from anywhere in the world. You can even talk to and make friends with people from anywhere in the world. Thanks to the internet, two people can grow up and have completely different experiences. And furthermore, there are cultures now that are not based off of your race or location. In fact, even further than that, a lot of culture that did start off that way have branched out into something more universal. Rap music is a good example and very relevant since Bhad Bhabie's in it. So because culture has become such a multifaceted thing, and because it's been untethered from location and race, if you're gonna call cultural appropriation, you can't just do it as a sweeping gesture. You have to evaluate it on a case-by-case basis. So that's why hitherto I haven't accused Bhad Bhabie of cultural appropriation. But now, let's evaluate it on a case-by-case basis. First of all, Bhad Bhabie has just shown blatant racism in the past.
I don't know your ass from your motherfucking elbow when y'all talking shit. What the fuck? One thing that's really starting to get to me is how on my Instagram people are saying, don't call me a nigger cracker. Like, you can't tell somebody not to call you a nigger, but then you just call them a cracker. Like, what the fuck?
Alright, besides the fact that she's just throwing that word around so liberally, her argument is just incredibly dumb. Also, what is the context of that clip? Why are people asking her to stop calling them the N-word? But anyway, her reaction in this is to decide whether it's okay to be racist based off of how people are acting. In fact, she's actually done this in the past. Back when she was getting called out for having the cornrows and the this and the that, she went on her Instagram story and made a message addressed to black females, which she then went on to call bald-headed hoes. And I'm not going to read it all, but I'm going to leave these on screen so you can see how she starts off by saying black females. In no point actually specifies a change of topic and then calls the viewer bald-headed hoes. And she's doing the same thing here because she says if people don't stop coming for her, she's gonna get real disrespectful. If you're just turning on racism and disrespect because you think someone deserves it, it's still racism and disrespect. Bhad Bhabie isn't quite some random person who thinks that black hair is cool. She's somebody who's very deliberately and constantly embroiled in turmoil with the black community. So in that context, her wearing black fashion and things traditionally associated with blackness in America comes across way more as mockery than appreciation. She shows up, disrespects people, but then basically takes their clothes on the way out. I think if some random girl was doing the exact same things fashion-wise as Bhad Bhabie was, no, it would not be wrong, because at the end of the day, said what I said about culture. But seeing as this is in fact Bhad Bhabie we're talking about, I think it's just super silly for her and her stan base to act like there's no underlying issue and they just can't imagine why people are getting so upset. Utter foolishness. Another thing that we need to take into consideration in this case-by-case evaluation is that Bhad Bhabie profits off of this cultural appropriation discourse. I mean, Google her right now. It's just article after article about her blackfishing controversies. This isn't hurting her reputation at all. In fact, it's extremely lucrative to be in the news cycle, in the social media cycle, when your job is to provide entertainment. And I am aware that I'm contributing to that by talking about her, but you're also super contributing to that by watching this video. Bottom line, controversy is the only way that this girl knows how to stay relevant, and that's because her platform was built off of controversy initially. So this whole starting discourse and fights and all that, she's gonna keep doing that because it's gonna keep getting her publicity, and she's just gonna go further and further with it. That's honestly why I'm not making like a Bhad Bhabie canceled or I'm dragging Bhad Bhabie for 20 minutes kind of video, because I think it's far far more interesting to use her as a springboard for a larger discussion about cultural appropriation and how the internet has impacted that, versus just use her as a laughingstock punching back, which is what people are doing, and all that's doing is giving her more clout and money. So my final case evaluation of Bhad Bhabie: yes, what she's doing is wrong. Not about the fact that her foundation is like 3 shades darker than her actual skin tone. It's about the fact that she's fueling and using this backlash to keep her career afloat. That's why I said it's deeper than a spray tan, but also deeper than blackfishing. You see what I mean? Lastly, I'm just going to bring up some miscellaneous issues. First of all, a lot of times these people are appropriating a struggle, which is the most curious thing I've ever seen in my entire life. For example, Rachel Dolezal, notorious black pretender, was faking getting racist hate mail, which is something she would never have had to worry about as a random white person. Anthony Ekundayo-Lennon claims that he faces the same issues as minority people when he is a white man. He's just not black. It's like they want there to be an issue. They want a problem. They want a struggle. And you can see that with Bhad Bhabie constantly going at it with what she deems her enemy, which happens to be black people online. You're not always under attack, Bhad Bhabie, because first of all, nobody cares that much. But secondly, this is something of your own creation, so I just find it incredibly odd. Another issue that I think people ignore with blackfishing when they try to discredit it is that a lot of these people are cosplaying as actual people of color. As I pointed out, Jaya Fern was looking like Nicki Minaj. I think we've all seen the photos of Kylie Jenner where she looked like Beyonce. And I'm just gonna be honest with you, Chief, and I saw other people saying it, Bhad Bhabie just looks like Cardi B here for some reason. So I mean, thinking certain aspects of being a black or a non-white person, or even being black and thinking certain aspects of being a white person are pretty, and trying to take those aspects for yourself is one thing, but looking up to individual people who are not your race and trying to be like them physically is the strangest. Don't you think that's pointing to a larger issue? I mean, Ollie London tease. Speaking of Ollie London, that brings me to my last point that I feel often goes overlooked with blackfishing and cultural appropriation, etc. A lot of times these people aren't just changing aspects of themselves, they're creating like fantasy versions of themselves. Like if you look at Ollie London in his pictures versus how he actually looks on video, or if you look at Dirty Hippie's Instagram photos where she just photoshops away her organs, or if you look at Bhad Bhabie and how she looks like someone who doesn't exist now. Whether you think that has anything to do with race or not, whether you think blackfishing is valid or not, I still hope you would find that very alarming for many reasons, the least of which is Bhad Bhabie's age. But I would like to leave this off by reminding people of her age. She is in fact 17 years old. She's responsible for some of her actions, but not all of this. She does have a PR team. There are people telling her what to do and instructing her. Everything she's doing wrong is just from having too much money and growing up with negative reinforcement being her primary source of income. But ultimately, Bhad Bhabie doesn't deserve hate for what she does, but she definitely deserves criticism. Everyone deserves criticism. You can criticize this video if you want to. Criticism isn't hate, and not everyone who's dragging Bhad Bhabie is doing it from a place of hate. They're just calling out behavior that they see as being problematic for various reasons. Bottom line, what I want you to take away from this video is that you're allowed to do whatever you want. People get so antsy when they start feeling like people are telling them they're not allowed to do certain things. In fact, they seem to care about that more than the actual issues itself, which makes it impossible to have these conversations about cultural appropriation in the first place. But that's why I tried to set aside some of the, I guess, extreme feelings in this situation and just focus on things that I feel go overlooked. Bottom line, it doesn't hurt to listen to people who are raising issues with you. You know what I mean? If anything, just listen to them because you know they can't do anything to stop you. The worst that could happen is you could learn something new, or your opinion just might not change at all, and that's also valid. But ultimately, all this blackfishing and people trying to look black and all this stuff doesn't really matter because I am black and I do look fantastic, and I can totally understand why people would want to look like me, so I just feel sorry for them. Honestly, who cares?